As we have studied moreover in the recent development in the American society, we have seen there are series of changes that occurred in the policy made by American in case of visa collection. It is not to the Indian or to the Asian in particular, but it also stands its focused approach towards the migrating people. And that is what there were so many nations which represented in the American society. And as we know, literature brings out the picture of this of the society in which it is produced. It brings out the lives, the multifaceted lives, the pains and sufferings of the people, the emotional sides, at the same time, the sensations, feelings, and all those sensibilities in the day to day lives of the people, in the socio political context, in the cultural context. What are the things that are opposed? What are the things that they find it very difficult to assimilate within themselves? There are various facets of day to day lives of the emigrated people, and these emigration or emigrated people have their own, say, complexity, confusion, and crisis, not at the social level or political level or administrative level, but to their personal level, to their very, say, to the deep touch, to their emotional and spiritual touch to their being. And that is what it becomes necessary for the Indian authors or the educated, so called educated Indian class to write, to depict their pains and sufferings in the, say, a broad and foreign environment. And all that has given a rise to the literature that we call the diaspora literature. And that is what this particular term has been used. Indian American literature means it stands for the Indian diaspora. Diaspora, it stands for the migration. Migration is not a new concept in the history. If we go back and look into the history, we will find that human being is a wanderer. By nature, it's a natural behavior of a human being to go from one place to another. At the very beginning, he was moving here and there for food and water and for safety, to make himself safe, to have the enough food, and where he could subsist म्हणजे जिवंत राहणे, where he could subsist in the adverse conditions. Say it was not possible for him to subsist, and that was the driving feature in the history. And over the period, we have so many social, when man becomes a little bit of social, little bit of political, and all other things that are there in the, say, civilization of human. So we have different causes for the emigration over the history and over the civilization till date. The issues and objectives over the history have changed. The historical objectives behind the human migration was not relevant even after 100 years or 1,000 years. So now these days there are various causes and objectives for the migration, and all that had reflected in literature. In the recent history, we have seen the Jews, the Jewish nation of on the surface of the world is Israel, as we know. The people from Israel migrated for various reasons to other parts of so-called world, and especially they were centered in the Europe, and Europe became the so-called Jewish hub outside Israel. But whatever, all these say migration over the history often used in the diaspora concept. And as we know, if we think about the Indian American diaspora or Indian diaspora, we see in the British era there were indentured labor, indentured labor that exist in the British era during 1830 to 1930. Indenture stands for the contractual labor. To some of the philosophers and critics, this indentured labor stands for the type of slavery. Indentured labor, those are contractual labor, means the indentured labor are recruited on a certain period of time, say 5 years, 6 years, and these contractual laborers can't leave the job, can't even seek for better opportunity, even cannot transfer his services to other, say, owner. So it's a contractual, and there were so many rules that comes. However, British era or British Raj in Europe or in Britain ruled out this indentured labor in 1930. It was in the colonial phase. But after the colonial period, there were so many, say, opportunities that opened up. Those who emigrated into Europe, into UK, or some of the parts of abroad, UK, US, they found themselves the opportunities more awaiting. So the so-called educated masses, for multiple reasons, are ready to leave the Indian shores and go and land into foreign shores. All that caused the mass migration. And in, say, the today's context, if we take up the example or so-called numbers from the Indian Foreign Ministry, it's a official data that more than 33 million people were in abroad who landed it to the foreign shores in 70 plus nations around the world. And that has caused, see, the opportunities are waiting, opportunities are beckoning them, and those educated classes who left India, say Indian firms, Indian, say, land, their motherland, to the target country, all that had uh, caused the mass migration. It's not the physical, but the educated class, the intelligentsia of the Indian, say, so called IT professionals, software and hardware engineers, technicians, managers, astronauts, and all other leaders who found that opportunities beckoning them abroad. It, it, it's simply the push and pull factor, that we see comparatively when we study this Indian diaspora. It's a brain drain. The intellectuals of the Indian so-called natives who found that there are not so much opportunities here in India. There is corruption against the transparency in the US. It's rupee versus dollars, US dollars. It's underdeveloped nation in India and it's developed nation in US. And at the same time, there are so many multiple reasons for them. Their personal levels, their professional level, their career level, everywhere they found that there is a push factor from here in their motherland, and there has been pull factor from US. And all that has led to the brain drain. At the same time, as we see in 1960s onwards, US states, United States of America has opened up and liberalized their policies. They have done away with the deportation after a certain period of time. There were no cap for the working professionals, and the significant numbers for the visa grant were increased after 1960s onwards, and visa rules become much more liberal for the foreign nationals. At the same time, not just intelligentsia, educator, trainers, or skilled professionals not only allowed, but their kids and kins were also allowed, and it becomes the family reunion after 1960s onwards, and that has engrossed these so-called diaspora. So those who are living in America, they have taken their family members with them, and it's a family reunion in US. And these things were possible with the liberalized visa rules by America after 1960s onwards. And at the same time, as we have seen in the 21st century, we have seen there were transformations in the communication technology. And the whole world, which seems to be a huge world, but it seems to be a small village because of telecommunications. There has been significant transformation in the communication media, and that has made everything everywhere communication is possible. So being, say, uh, living in US, they are very much near to their kids and kins here in India, because within a second you can establish the connections through mobile phones, through video conferencing, WhatsApp chat, and all other internet linked media. So it's transformation in the communication system that awakened again and expedited means चालना देणं, स्पीड देणं, वेग देणं. मायग्रेशनला अधिक स्पीड यामुळे सगळ्या गोष्टींमुळे मिळाला. आणि म्हणून जे काही मायग्रेशन करणारे जे एज्युकेटेड क्लास आहेत, हा मोस्टली बेटर करिअर ऑपॉर्च्युनिटीसाठी विकसित देशामध्ये चांगल्या पद्धतीचं लाईफ स्टँडर्ड जीवन जगावं या सर्व दृष्टिकोनातून युरोपला, ला, ऑस्ट्रेलिया किंवा UK हे जे डेव्हलप नेशन्स आहेत, ह्या नेशन्समध्ये निघाल आणि हा जो डायस्पोरा हा तिथे राहतोय. दुसऱ्या बाजूला इंडियामध्ये जास्तीत जास्त त्या ठिकाणी आपल्याला पाहायला मिळतं का जास्तीत जास्त प्रमाणामध्ये प्रोफेशनल कोर्सेस, टेक्निकल क्वालिफिकेशन्स मिळवणारे ग्रॅज्युएट्स त्या ठिकाणी निर्माण व्हायला लागलेत. प्रोफेशनल्स त्यामध्ये इंजिनियर्स असतील, टेक्निशियन्स असतील, सॉफ्टवेअर इंजिनियर्स असतील, त्याचबरोबर मॅनेजमेंट रिलेटेड असलेले MBA ग्रॅज्युएट्स असतील, IIT आणि IIM हे जे कॉलेजेस आहेत, इन्स्टिट्यूशन्स आहेत, they have done a remarkable job. And before the results are out, many foreign, say, companies came into India, recruited these professionals, and took them with them. So it's a brain drain, and it is often there for it is often there for the Indian so-called graduates and IT technicians and all those say management to move out of India. There were so many contractual and packages that were offered during these so-called ages. Say in say 20th century and 21st century. These were the driving features. It's push and pull factor, as I told you. The, the compare and contrast, corruption, transparency, underdeveloped developed nations, Indian rupee, US dollars. There is a remarkable difference between these two features. Here, for a small work, they have to go through the series of files, red tape file process, as we know. But in America, there are opportunities. It's better living conditions to live in a country in a beautiful environment like America, beautiful, say, environment to explore the opportunity. आपल्या करिअरमध्ये जास्तीत जास्त त्या ठिकाणी प्रयत्न करून आपल्याला संधी कशी मिळेल, पुढे जाण्याची संधी कुठे जास्त आहे, इंडियामध्ये तुलनेने कमी वाटले. इथे ट्रान्सपरन्सी नाहीये, पारदर्शकता नाहीये, जे अमेरिकेमध्ये त्यांना मिळाली. आणि म्हणून ह्या सर्व वैशिष्ट्यांनी परिपूर्ण त्यांचे ऑब्जेक्टिव्ह, त्यांचे उद्दिष्ट पूर्ण करण्यासाठी US हे एक उत्तम असा देश, संधी ही त्यांना मिळाली, एक ऑप्शन त्यांना मिळाला. आणि म्हणून या सगळ्या गोष्टींपासून परावृत्त होऊन अमेरिकेचा आकर्षण जे आपण म्हणतो पुल फॅक्टर, हा पुल फॅक्टर जास्त वजनाचा आहे, हेवी आहे. आणि यामुळे बहुतांश जे ग्रॅज्युएट आहेत, जे सो कॉल्ड इंटेलिजन्सिया आपण म्हणतो, बुद्धिमान जे काही आहेत, त्यांनी हा देश सोडून अमेरिकेमध्ये त्यांनी स्थलांतर केलं. तिथेही त्यांना काही सोपं जीवन नाहीये. सी आणि म्हणून हे जे आहे हे आपल्याला या ठिकाणी बघायचं. त्यांच्या जीवनाच्या संदर्भात त्यांना अमेरिकेमध्ये कोणत्या प्रकारच्या आठवणी येतात? ठीक आहे, अपॉर्च्युनिटीज आहेत, त्यांना खूप संधी तिथे मिळणार, पैसे खूप मिळणार, पगार जास्त मिळणार, डेव्हलप नेशन्स मध्ये राहतील, खास मध्ये फिरतील. बट are they satisfied? Are they happy emotionally? That is one of the things that we need to think about. And as we know, we have seen there are so many Indian authors, writers who brought the pains and sufferings of this so called Indian people who migrated to America. Of course, they are living. There are series of, say, generations that are taking plus descending in America. The next generation we find very much attached to the American soil. But the first generation, those who first migrated to America, their mind is here in India. Their emotions are attached to the soil, to the relations, to the family members here in India. So they often feel how they go into the past, the time spent, the happy uh, childhood they spent here in Indian villages and cities. The lens, the lens of cities and villages, the playful mood they enjoyed here in India, the happiness, the satisfaction, the excitement, the joy and ecstasy they enjoyed here in India is no longer in the foreign country, in among the foreign nationals. They were culturally, socially not their own. They are different people. Their culture is different. Fellow Americans are altogether different social background and cultural background. But Indians who carried their culture, their lives, they lived here in India. They have their own food habits. They have their own languages. They have their own culture, social life and cultural life, the life of the origin country, that is India. But they find all these cultural background, all these linkages, all these relations, all these fellow respect to the elders are no longer valid in the foreign country like America. Everywhere, the matrimony ceremonies, the death ceremonies, the mourning, the celebration of so called Hindu festivals or festivals that are celebrated here in India are no longer celebrated in the foreign country. So they found the type and the way they can rejoin this type of say lives in a foreign country like America. They have to adopt to the the living conditions of America. They have to follow the American life, the way the Americans are living, doing. Otherwise, they will feel that we are inferior to them. The fellow Indian will find inferior to Americans if they won't follow them, if they won't obey their life standard, cultural life and social life and personal life, if they won't follow their life, they will be inferior. So they need to adopt to the American consciousness. But the Indianness, they can't totally discard. त्यांचं भारतीय मन, भारतीयपणा जो असतो तो त्यांच्या पूर्ण जीवनाच्या सर्व अंगाने भरलेला आहे. तो त्यांना सोडता येत नाही. मग एकीकडे अमेरिकन लाईफ सारखं आणि एकीकडे इंडियन ओरिजिन नुसार आहे अशा प्रकारचा डबल कॉन्शियसनेस त्या डायस्पोरामध्ये पाहायला मिळतं. आणि हा डायस्पोरा अमेरिकेमध्ये हे इंडियन लोक राहत असताना आपल्याला ह्या डबल कॉन्शियसनेसने तयार झालेले पाहायला मिळतात. मग त्यांना प्रश्न निर्माण होतो का अरे मी कोण आहे? मी काय आहे? माझं नाव काय, मी कोण आहे, स्वतःचे रेकग्नेशन काय. उलट रेकग्निशन मिळण्यासाठीच तर अमेरिकेमध्ये गेलेले असतात. पण ते रेकग्निशन कितपत आहे, मिळतंय का, माझं नाव काय आहे, माझं अस्तित्व काय आहे. मी फॉरेन लँड, इंडियन नाव आहे फॉरेन कंट्रीमध्ये. सगळे डेव्हिड, जॉन, डोनाल्ड हे असे आहेत. आपला बिचारा शंकर असतो, भगवान असतो. त्याचं नाव सचिन असेल, अक्षय असेल, राजू असेल, रामेश्वर असेल, रमेश असेल. तर दॅट बिकम्स अन आयडेंटिटी क्रायसिस. काही वेळेस कोणतं घ्यायचं, कोणत्या नावाने ओळखलं जायचं. जरी नाव असेल तर दॅट हिंट्स ॲट पर्टिक्युलर से इंडियननेस. So identity dilemma is the one of the things that we see. Then we have alienation. We feel alienated, cut away from their roots. भारताच्या असलेल्या त्यांची पाळंमुळं जी खोलवर रुतलेली असतात नातेसंबंधामध्ये, जमिनीमध्ये, मातीमध्ये, त्यांचा जो लगाव असतो या सगळ्या गोष्टींपासून तुटल्यासारखं वाटतं त्यांना. निराधार असल्यासारखं आकाशामध्ये पतंग, तुटलेली पतंग जशी उडते तशा प्रकारचं अलिनेशन त्यांना वाटतं. कुठला आपला धागा निसटतोय का, आपण वाऱ्याच्या झोताप्रमाणे कुठेही जाऊ शकतो. आणि ही मानसिक जी काही पेन सफरिंग आहेत, अलिनेशन जे आहेत, हे अलिनेशन त्यांना त्या ठिकाणी खूप प्रमाणात जाणवतं. तर हे सर्व पेन अँड सफरिंग, हे डबल कॉन्शियसनेस, हे आयडेंटिटी क्रायसिस, हा नॉस्टॅल्जिया, त्यांचं मन लागून राहतं जुन्या आठवणींमध्ये, चांगल्या विचारांमध्ये, इंडियामध्ये जे त्यांचं आयुष्य घालवलं त्या संदर्भातलं. ते हॅपी मोमेंट्स हे त्यांना त्रास देतात. आणि ह्यामुळे अलिनेशन ही एक प्रकारची जाणीव ही त्यांना सातत्याने वाटत असते, तुटल्यासारखं वाटतं. आणि म्हणून डायस्पोरा लिटरेचरमध्ये हे सर्व चित्रित होतं, प्रतिबिंबित होतं. पुढचे जनरेशन आहे, एक पिढी गेली, त्यांची मुलं जन्माला आली अमेरिकेमध्ये. आणि हे अमेरिकेमध्ये जन्माला आलेली मुलं हे इंडियन आई-बापांकडून खूप काही घेणार नाही. कारण त्यांचे आई-वडील हे अमेरिकेमध्ये राहायला लागले. त्यांच्या आई-वडिलांनी इंडियामध्ये राहत असताना भरपूर घेतलं. इंडियन लाईफ, इंडियन कल्चर, इंडियन सोशल स्टँडर्ड्स, रिच्युअल्स, ट्रॅडिशन सगळे फॉलो केलं. बट देअर पॅरेंट्स आर लिव्हिंग इन अमेरिका. They are more prone to accept the American life standard rather than Indian life standard. And that is what their parents are Indians, they are Hindus or whatever religion they are. They have their own social and cultural background. But the whole environment is outside is American. So again, the identity crisis in the next generation that we see. पुढच्या पिढीमध्ये पुन्हा हे जनरेशन पाहायला मिळतं. मग ही पिढी धड इंडियन पण नसते आणि धड अमेरिकन पण नसते. हे अकल्चरेशन होतं. They are more prone to American lifestyle. Going to the pub, डेटिंगला जाणं, पबमध्ये जाणं, दंगा मस्ती करणं, फॉरेन मेम, तिच्या प्रेमात पडणं, तिच्या प्रेमामध्ये राहून आई वडिलांना सोडून जाणं, जे इंडियामध्ये नाही घडत. आई वडिलांची काळजी घ्यायची असते म्हातारपणी, हे फॉरेनमध्ये नाहीये. एकदा मुलगा कमवता झाला का त्यांनी आई वडिलांना सोडून द्यायचं असतं आणि राहायचं असतं आपलं स्वतःच. हे फॉरेन स्टँडर्ड आहे. आणि असे जर इंडियन वागायला लागले तर फर्स्ट जनरेशनला खूप त्रास होतो. मग त्यांना आठवतं का आम्ही आमच्या आई वडिलांना कसं सांभाळलं होतं, ही मुलं आम्हाला का सांभाळत नाही. तर हे it is not their fault either, but it's definitely it's a acculturation process. जी मुलं फर्स्ट जनरेशन मधले, पिढीमधले, जे आई वडिलांच्या समोर दारू पित नसत, ड्रिंकिंग करत नसत, त्याच त्यांच्यासमोर त्यांची मुलं हे ड्रिंक करतात अमेरिकन सोसायटीमध्ये राहत असताना. इट्स अ अकल्चरेशन प्रोसेस. ओके. आणि म्हणून ह्या सगळ्या गोष्टींमध्ये आपल्याला पाहायला मिळतं त्याची आयडेंटिटी क्रायसिस. व्हॉट आय एम. आय एम नॉट अमेरिकन, आय एम नॉट इंडियन. दॅट आयडेंटिटी क्रायसिस इज वन ऑफ द थिंग दॅट वी सी in the next generation due to this acculturation process. So they tries to establish their identity. They tried to assimilate into the American mainstream. As we know, we have now Kamala Harris, who is the runner-up for the vice president. Okay, of course, it may get Kamala Harris. See the name, Indian and American confluence of Indian and American Kamala Harris. So Kamala, or likewise, all Indians who migrated there are staying for generations are trying to assimilate themselves with the American people, American stream, and all living standards. So the process that takes place over the ages or over the decades is that of assimilation, adjustment to the American, say, lifestyle. They themselves adjust, and at the same time they adopt the American lifestyle and standards and the so-called social culture and rituals and traditions that were observed and uh, are there. So all these that we see the features of Indian diaspora in Indian diaspora. So the literature brings out all these features: the family relations, the family problems, what the Indians are living in India, and how in a foreign country, in a foreign culture, how these are put to, say, they have expense of it. It's a crisis, and all that had, say, so-called features that percolated in the literature, and we have so many diaspora writers, or I would say the diaspora. It stands for the diaspora itself hints at the writers from Indian origin, but these writers, those we call modern Indian writers, are all diaspora. The question and the crisis with the Indian English literature is this one. If all major Indian writers are living in America, are they representing India or representing America? And to talk on this is to talk on Indian diaspora. So they won't be reflecting the Indian soil, Indian lives, Indian socio-cultural background in the true sense of the term. They are reflecting the diaspora features. They are living abroad. Their sensitivity is definitely somewhat Indian, but they are living abroad and their lives are modified. And the question arises, are they reflecting India? As we say, we often quote, or at the very beginning, I made a statement that literature brings out the picture of the society. Are they representing Indian society? That is a question to think about. So in the first part of this Indian diaspora lecture, video lecture, I conclude with these features. there are some of the work of arts text that I would like to hint at and develop and discuss rather into a broad, say, so-called in next lecture. So I would develop this, say, so-called point into next segment, that is diaspora second. So it will be a diaspora second lecture. I will indicate in such a way in my video. Okay. I hope your study is going well. I hope you will read and understand whatever I have discussed, although I used somewhat Marathi for better understanding of the conditions and situations this Indian diaspora has laid through. So with this, definitely try to understand the term and you will definitely come out with a good. I would say read and watch again and again until it is clear to you what does it stands for. Thank you.